so I get it. Like, life is hard some of the time, and life is not hard some of the time. Sometimes when you're listening to my podcast, the stuff that I'm talking about really makes sense, and you're like ready, like right out the gate, ready to use it. And then other times you're feeling really overwhelmed. So I've given you a variety of things over the last few weeks. I've really just been trying to kind of help walk you through some of my own journey at the end of this summer and how difficult that was for me, and show you how my tools work. But hey, I empathize with, I also shared a really, it was probably one of the darkest times in my life where I wrote a letter to myself because I really needed to hook myself to a version of me that could have hope, because the version of me then really didn't. So I've been in all those places too. I am just like you, I promise. And I want you to know that this is just what life is. I think we've been given a load of shit. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that many of us believe that we're not doing this right because we're not, in the Zen state, or haven't found ultimate peacefulness, or, there are just hard days and not hard days, or really great days and we can't sustain them. And so we think we're doing something wrong. No, no, actually, you're killing it. You are doing life. This is what life is. And there are even skills in this journey for making that work for us. If you need to shift your thinking because you think you're doing this wrong, you think somehow you've messed it all up, and you haven't, you are just like me, just like so many of us. And I want to help you with that mindset shift. So, how about you just keep listening today? Because that is what we're going to talk about. Welcome. This is Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving, a podcast that teaches women in midlife to unapologetically stop silencing their dreams and start designing the lives they want to live in. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie, and as a clinical psychologist of the last 2 decades and a twice divorced single mother myself, I not only know how hard it can feel heading into midlife, I am living it right here with you. I have taken all the many failed attempts and lessons learned in my own life and combine it with my extensive clinical experience to give you the tools you need to make midlife the best time in your life. No joke. So let's get started. Well, welcome back. This might be one of the last conversations in a little while where it's just you and I sitting down. I have a few different ways that I'm going to run the podcast through the rest of the fall. So I'll have a few of these. I will, because I love you. I love our afternoon chats. Although it's not afternoon right now, I'm still drinking my morning coffee. I love our afternoon chats. So there's no way I'm getting rid of this for, permanently or something. Please don't worry. But I have all these really great things. I've got some new interviews. I've got interviews with clients, with coaching clients that took me up on my free offer, which, by the way, still there. Still in the notes if you want a link. But you're going to see what it looks like to go through a midlife valuation with me. And that's really what it is. We're just valuating not evaluating, but finding the value of your midlife, even where it is, right? And then I'm helping these people on a journey of, how do they get to their goals, right? But I think that one of the primary things I run into, really, which is what our conversation is today, one of the primary things that I run into is that people really think they're doing something wrong, that life isn't, like, they haven't arrived yet, or they followed all the rules. And so they've checked every box and life just doesn't feel satisfying enough. And so they feel like they've somehow failed themselves. And you ladies, one of the worst parts of this to me is that there is this cultural programming and conditioning that, like, you've made some sort of moral faux pas, like morally you're doing something wrong, you are this awful person. Like, there's this whole baggage that we carry with this idea of being right and being not right. And I want to blow all that out of the water today. I wanna take us all on a journey of like, fuck it. Like, no, I don't want to buy that bullshit because it does not work for me. So I want to help you help yourself get out of this moral dilemma of how you must be doing it wrong if you're not just like enjoying every single second of every day. Like that is literally not what we're like. Nobody does this. The problem is that we are fed a very sanitized version of what it means to arrive that way. And we think no struggle is ever wired in. When you make enough money, when you have the right family life, when you're in the ideal job, when whatever. None of that is actually true. And case in point, do you follow on the Instagram any of your favorite celebrities? Do you ever, find yourself in a rabbit hole on TikTok or on Facebook or wherever you get your stuff where you're like, they did what? This celebrity is, well, huh? I don't understand. They have everything that they need. Why are they like flopping? Oh, they must have some sort of major mental illness. No, I'm a clinical psychologist. I am here to tell you their mental illness is called humanity. And nobody like arrives at this place where everything is working and life feels good all the time. We are wired to have all the feels, all of them, which means discomfort's in there, which means sadness is in there, which means grief is in there, which means anger is in there, irritability, all those things, frustration, all of them. Good news, so are joy, so are happiness, so is contentment, so so is curiosity, so is creativity. All of it is there. But a good human life is being able to just sit in the mess with it. Like really seriously sit in the mess. I have a little trick today that isn't mine. I'm re-recording my podcast right now, just so you know. I'm re-recording this podcast because I heard something yesterday. So, like, I'll be posting this on Thursday, and this is only Tuesday. By the way, that sometimes happens. But by the way, that sometimes happens because, well, I'm a one woman show doing my own podcast and doing my own editing. So it isn't uncommon for me to do this, but I actually had something prepared and I decided to slip this little goodie in because at my women's accountability writing group that I am in as I write my book, oh my gosh, that there was a bomb dropped for me and somebody shared this really beautiful interview with Michael Caine, and I want to share that with you. And I want to share it with you because it dovetailed with this subject matter that I wanted to get out today so well. And since this might be, one of the last ones where it's just you and I and Dr. Natalie is just pulling topics out of thin air and deciding to wax eloquent about them, I really felt like it was like, let's go out with a bang. Let's go out with like a skill set that really, really works. So let's back this up. So in my writers accountability group, the woman that was running the group that day, so we, have kind of a little activity that we kind of start that with. She shared something she saw on Instagram by Michael Caine. It was an interview with him, and this is an actor. If you don't know him, you can look him up. He's on the interwebs. Well, I know you can find him on out there if you've never watched him before, which kind of seems like really because he's been in a lot of things. What he was talking about was when he was early in his career. And when he was in early career, he had this experience where he was doing a scene and the couple that did the scene before them had moved some item on set that there was a chair in front of the door where his entrance was. So he apologized to, I don't know, the producer, director, whatever, other actors because he was having a difficult time getting in. And I think it probably is a director because this sounds more like direction that you would get. But the director's like, dude, use it. Use the difficulty, right? Chairs in the way. If this is a comedy, trip over it, fall on your ass, look like a fool, like use it. If this is a drama, pick it up, slam it against the wall, slam it on the floor, kick it across the room. Just use the difficulty. And this concept of using the difficulty really hit me like in a wave, because what I wanted to talk about today is, how do you sit in this mess? How do you be in the mess of our life and not feel like you're failing? I mean, because that is really ultimately, I just don't want you to feel like you're failing. You're not. You are killing it. You are doing life here. Life is hard and it has a mess that ensues with it. There's all sorts of feelings, but sometimes we just don't know how to be in the mess of it, right? Especially when what we're talking about is the difficulty, is those more uncomfortable emotions that nobody really wants anything to do with, right? So I want to help you help yourself. And I think use the difficulty is a really great framework for what I want to help you with today. Instead of getting stuck in the judging of what's happening around you, is this a good or a not good thing? I want you just to use it, whatever it is in front of you. Now, here's the beauty: when it's joy or contentment or one of those positive emotions, success, you feel like you've done something correctly, you love it. Using that it's not difficult, right? So use the difficulty wouldn't seem to apply. The truth is, though, you do use that in your life. I want you to think about it for a second, just a second. Like, imagine the last thing that you did that you really felt good about, right? That you really were like, yes, that was solid. That was an amazing event. I like how I carried myself in it. I like how I showed up to this. So just bring that in your mind's eye. I'm going to share with you one of my more recent ones. Are you liking what you're hearing today in this podcast episode? Oh, I am so glad. I love being able to really touch people in a place where they need the help, right? So I have two requests of you. The first one, could you just think of one person in your life that also could hear this message? I bet you could. And what I'd ask you to do is, when you're done listening today, why don't you just take the link and send it to that person, right? Let them have a chance to also gain from this the way that you are today. And then the second thing that I would request that you do is make sure that you're following me where you get your podcasts. Like, comment. I even on Spotify have questions each and every week. Use any of those outlets because it does help me help you. What I gather from that information is what you want to hear about. And then I make sure that these podcasts are relevant to what your needs are. So I was recently under the weather, and happens. My kid's been in school for all of 2 weeks, and what do we get? A cold. Woohoo! Golly, I love viruses. Anyway, so I was a little under the weather, and I think I probably for the last 6 weeks have been in a new routine with my exercise. I kind of bit the bullet and started to use my treadmill even on days that's beautiful outside, mostly because I was caught. If you remember, if you've been following through the summer, I was caught in that daycare situation. So I didn't have a lot of time and space away from my little one. Like, she was in the house with me. I was working, again, blessed, working from home, very privileged, all those things. And the space that I lost first was self care, alone time, like big time. I lost that because I mean, I daycare was not there. Like, I was hodgepodging things together. And so that's one of those ones that I'm also, responsible, but I let that fall first instead of like finding a babysitter and making those times. But one of the ways I compromised it is I found a new routine to get into, and I had started a new exercise routine that I was doing in-house in the mornings. Listen, the layers of amazingness that just came out my face, I don't know that you truly appreciate, because this is a woman that 5 years ago could not get out of bed, pressed snooze half a dozen times every morning. Mornings were not my thing. The fact that I even get up in the morning early and accomplish things for myself before other people is a Christmas miracle. I'm not going to lie to you. It's like the red shoes. I'm not going to lie. But I'll just say that now that I've got myself, bought myself my coffee maker on a nightstand that I had that started to wake me up, not lying to you. Like I tried all the tricks. Once I got myself though into a routine to have a morning routine, I would never go back because it's some of my most sacred time. Now, there are other people in my house, an 8-year-old, but I use that time and space just for me. And so that was where I placed this little exercise routine. And for me, exercise that is for the sake of exercising is not a good why. I won't do it. I won't stick to it. But I've had some health issues myself over the last, few years that just come with being in midlife and being perimenopausal. And watching these three friends this summer have major health issues show up has been kind of an instigator. Like, I don't want to be addressing that right now as a single parent in my late 40s, like really don't. And so I have a new motivation to just like take care of this body because I only get one. And she is running down at 47 because that's pretty normal. So it isn't for the sake exercise for the sake of exercise or weight loss or any of those. None of those things matter to me. They're not a great why for me, but I want to feel good in my body. And I know like I got a little camper this summer, got a injury in my shoulder from cranking that pop up and cranking it down and cranking it and cranking it down. So I can appreciate when your body starts to wear out. Like, I don't want to be in that place. And I certainly don't want to be in a place where I have to make really difficult decisions because my body is shutting down in different ways. And that was what my friends were up against. So that's a great why. So I found this new exercise routine. Anyway, sick last week, had this exercise routine, tried it the first day that I was sick, and I was like, oh, hell no, hard pass. Like, nope, not going to happen. I have a little bit of asthma that's induced either by upper respiratory problems, colds, viruses, allergies even, but it also is compromised by exercise. And so I have to do a little inhaler before I do any kind of heavy lifting, heavy exercise, anything more than just walking. And that's going to bring my heart rate up. And so I was like, oh no, we're not, we're done, the week is over. Probably later in the week when I was starting to go back up again, I tried to walk and it was labored for me. It was like, here's the difference. It's like I was walking um, and it felt like if I was jogging or if I was running, like I was breathing that hard. That's what happens for me. It's just not worth it. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. It'll probably be defeating to my staying engaged in an exercise program. And I know this about me. I've done it for a long time. So this week, yesterday, in fact, because I start on Mondays as my, like start over for how many days did you get of exercise in the week. I got up and I got, into my program, did the treadmill thing. And I was like, yep, it's a little bit more labored, but I'm feeling much better this week. So it's like not a big deal. I lost my stamina when I was doing it, 4 or 5 times a week, the week prior, when all of last week I just nothing. So I was really happy with myself that I even got on it. And then I did a modified version of that program. And then again, I got on it this morning. Right. So this is a really good example of this is not a difficulty for me to use, right? But I'm going to use that momentum. You better bet your bottom dollar, and I'll get up and I'll do it again tomorrow. So I haven't gotten back to the program as it was when I left it before I got sick, but my plan is like by Thursday morning, that's what's going to be. I'll be right back in step. And I am feeling great about this, and it is easy to use that kind of experience, right? Am I right? Do you feel me? Okay, so you go back to your version of that. And I want you to think for just a second, okay, when I'm on top of it, yeah, you're right, Natalie. I use that. I use that to get me going in a forward motion, right? That's what's key. You're sitting in the moment with what is, right? You're liking what you're seeing, and so it's easy to sit in the moment with what is. You're using that what isness to do the next right thing in your life, and it goes seamlessly. And this is what happens when positive things are happening in our life. And I use positive in the culturally used sense. When what you're feeling and doing feels good in your body, is deemed good by your world, so whatever context you're living in, your family, your culture, your whatever society, it doesn't matter to me, then it's easy to use that. Yeah, we go with it. We can improv. We can do that. Like Michael Caine is saying, use it, right? But when life is difficult, then there seems to be an added burden. And that added burden is that we start to judge ourselves, that morally we are somehow effing it all up, that we're in this place where it doesn't feel great. When what it could be is that scene right before you, that couple, they just left a chair in your way, right? Like the moment right before you, that what's happening to you right before this, it could just be that life kind of left you some lemons, but you can make lemonade, right? That's using the difficulty. So now I want you to think about a recent time, because I'm hoping that like by the end of today, I'm going to give you a little homework. This is kind of psychologist-y of me, but hey, whatever. I want you to think of a recent time where you have felt a little stuck, not so stuck that you're paralyzed stuck. That's not going to be useful because there's a lot more that goes into needing skills to get through that. But just something that you're feeling very stopped by, right? I want you to think of that. I want you to bring that into your mind's eye. And now I want you to listen to this story that I have for you. So it is no secret that I've been through a couple divorces. It's no secret because you just listened to my love letter to myself that 5 years ago, I was in a state at, kind of starting over from ground zero. Maybe actually I was in like the sub zero range at that point. But anyway, I was starting over after my second divorce. And any of you out there in the world that know divorce know that that leaves you in just a financial upheaval, right? So, second time in my life where that's happened. And I don't have great habits about how to get out of that. I just don't. I'm still working on that. That's one of my personal life goals is to kind of create legacy and get out of the trap of the paycheck to paycheck cycle that most single parents find themselves in. The world doesn't work well with us on this, but I'm bound and determined that I will transcend this, right? But here is one of the places where I get stuck. And this might be you. So, like, I'd love to hear in the comments if this resonates for you. But one of the places I get stuck is getting the mail, like literally just getting it out of the mail box. I know that sounds crazy, but where I live, like the mail does not come into my house. I used to have a house where like there was like a mail slot in your front door and it just came into your house. Now I have to like walk down the street and have a little lockbox, blah, blah, blah. Um, getting the mail in my house is one part, and then it just sits in piles. Does anybody have this? I don't like this is like definitely directly correlated to the trauma of going through 2 divorces for me. For sure. Like I can show you the line as a clinical psychologist, like, boop, here's why we do this. So anyway, this is one of my problems. And then it's cluttery. And then I get crabby about clutteriness. I mean, go back to my meltdown from the beginning of the summer. And I think that was actually the trigger that I talked about. Like I ended up in a fight with my 8-year-old before we were leaving the house. We were missing leaving the house, but it really had to do with like I started to look around. And I'm like, oh my god, everything's everywhere, and blah. So this is a difficulty. This is a chair, like Michael Caine is talking about, right? Like this is like, oh, I'm sorry, can't come in the way that you told me to. There's a chair there. Like I got mail all over the place that I don't want to go through. Probably because there's bills in it, probably because there's, responsibility that's tied to that and all sorts of networks that are not great in my brain that tell me stories that I don't want to hear. Right. So I avoid it and I pile it and I stack it and I do, that, but that's not helpful. Right. So this is my struggle. This is my difficulty. How do you use that difficulty? Right. Well, I recently had another difficulty that I was avoiding completely, but because it was all mental, right? The mail that I was stacking up was not visual to me. I wasn't putting some of the pieces together. The thing with the mail, like I have a system when I start to slip back into the old pattern and that rumble strip is there, then I can pull myself back on the highway with. And one of the ways I do that is I kind of anchor it to something that's a pleasurable experience for me. So that's having phone calls with, people I haven't seen in a while, or connecting with people I haven't seen in a while. So I was on the phone, somebody I hadn't connected with in a while, and I was like, oh, perfect time. I'm going to go through this mail, because if I'm on the phone call and I'm enjoying myself, then getting through this is garbage, this is garbage, this is garbage first split, and these are these bills, these are these bills, these are these bills piles, easy to do, easy for me to do, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Here is the really interesting part for me is, okay, so I have this system that helps me clean up the mail, and I was doing that, but the conversation I was having was around you know not unlike many single parents, have about 5 jobs that I'm doing at any given time. Some I don't do as much, like they're not a daily job, right? This was one of those. It's just one of those, like, side hustles that doesn't really bring in a ton of money, and yet I keep it. I just kind of keep it on the side over there, cuz I might need it someday. And I was getting kind of irritated. This person I was on the phone with knows me through that channel, and I was getting kind of irritated on the call as we were talking about, like, why am I keeping this position, because it really isn't benefiting me. I mean, like, financially for sure, but like not in any capacity at this point. So it's kind of one of those things I'm doing for the sake of doing, but not really paying attention to why I'm staying in it. And the conversation resulted in doing that. And what I realized is there was like this parallel process, right? Here I am with the mail, kind of breaking it down into steps. I'm using the difficulty and I'm breaking it down into steps, and I'm piling it up in things that are easy and palatable for me to take care of in, like a stepwise process later. And I'm on the phone with my friend, and I'm doing the same with all that mental clutter around this side hustle that might not need to be a side hustle for me anymore. It's not additive to my life. It's just another responsibility. And so this person was really helping to clarify that for me. And I used that difficulty. I used the male difficulty to kind of anchor me into conversation with this person. And then I opened up the parallel processes. I was like, oh, and I'll go through that mail too with her on this call. And it really helped me. Like a week later, I called her back and was like, oh, I'm ready. And here's my decision around what I'm going to be doing with that. And thank you for sorting that mail out with me, because I never would have thought about this. Eh, eh, I wouldn't have. I would just all would have stayed cluttered up there. And I think I would have tried to avoid it, like I do with my piles of mail as I'm, putting piles of mail away. It wouldn't have been helpful to me at all. So I used the difficulty, and that has really helped me to do some things, change some things around, so that I feel like it's a doable thing for me to fix at this point. I'm just so grateful that you are a loyal listener, and that what I'm delivering here is something that you want to be listening to each and every week. There are just other ways that you can be working with me through learntoloveyourstory.com, and I want to make sure that you know what those are. Now, for starters, all of these are links that you would find in the notes for every single podcast. And if you found me in a post on learntoloveyourstory.com, all of these links are there as well. But there are 3 ways that you can work with me. The first, and the one that I really strongly recommend, is join my Facebook group, join my community. This is a place where we can all talk with one another about what you're hearing me put out on podcasts, write in my blogs, and you really get some support, some community around making change, working towards that centered life thriving that you want. The second thing is I have a whole set of courses online, all there, right there for you, that will teach you and walk you through with workbooks, with guided meditations. So if you haven't seen that, you should at least go over and browse. And then my last and my favorite way is to meet with you one-on-one. I do a free consultation for an entire hour. It's called a midlife valuation. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the value of your midlife. We're going to compare that to the goals that you have for yourself. And we're going to help you come up with a plan where there's gaps there. And it's all free to you. So these are the 3 ways to get started working with me in another way if you're loving what you're hearing on the podcast. That's what I want you to do when the discomfort, the unease of those more difficult or not fun emotions show up. It's easy to use that when it's positive emotion. It's harder to use the difficulty when it's negative. But I want you to think about what happens to you if you're always using what's in front of you. If you're always just sitting in it, letting yourself wash through what's all the feels, organizing it, and using it, you are just this much better. I still have that side hustle. I still have like 2 piles of the mail left, if I'm being real with you, that I haven't gotten through, but they're piles and they have assignments and it's doable. And I used the difficulties in both of these, right? Like I have things that I'm doing instead of using my time in that self judgment of I'm morally doing something wrong here, of avoidance, of getting irritable or fighting it off. None of those bring me any closure, any help, right? So what I want you to grasp from today is one, life is messy and it's okay for all the emotions to be there. All are equally like welcome in your life because they're just telling you something about what's this information in front of me and what do I need to do next. Sometimes that feels really good. Like when you watch yourself get up a week after being sick and hit that exercise routine again and be like, yes. And you use that to keep jettisoning you forward in your plan to stay on that exercise plan, right? So going back to that original thing I thought that I wanted you to think about that's positive for you. Or you can use the difficulty that same way. You can say, hey, life is kind of sucky right this second. And here's why it's a little sucky right this second. And I can just sit in this. And instead of naming that I'm doing something wrong or beating myself up about it, no, I'll be compassionate and just notice and feel it. But I'll also use it. Like, because, and this is what I loved about what Michael Caine said. He's like, think about it. Even if like a 0.5%, not not 100% use the difficulty, even if you can use it a 0.5% to better your circumstances, you've bettered yourself. You've this difficulty not only didn't take you down, it took you up, right? If you are in the driver's seat, if you're an agent of change in your own life and don't fall victim to these difficult emotions that are present, you use them, you've improved your life. Have you made the problem go away? No. If you walk in my house, I have 5 piles of mail, but I had 7, right? And if you walked into my head, you would know that I was like, there was clutter everywhere around this side hustle thing. And I organized what that was. And you would see those organizations and you would see attached to it my notes for, and I need to do this with this part, this with this part, and this with this part. Right? Like that's amazing. I am better for it. Is it all over yet? No. This is the mess of life. Like it takes some time and it takes some steps and all of those things. But if there's one takeaway that I want you to take from this talk today, it's that it's okay to be in all of it. All of it's welcome, right? And the second takeaway that I want you to have is use those difficult moments to better yourself. Don't push away from the difficulty. Don't hide from the difficulty. Don't beat yourself up and think that you've morally done something wrong because you have difficulty. Be grateful that it's there and use it for a purpose of making your life feel better for you. That's it. You are your life's purpose. So the only person that needs to benefit from you using that difficulty is you. That's my theme for you. So I want you to go back in your mind to that difficult thing that's happening right now. And I want you to spend the rest of, I don't know, this probably is about 30 minutes long. Take 5 minutes after this podcast is done and just think through how to internally organize this differently. Use that difficulty. And even if a half percent, like use it, do something with it. Is this a comedy? Man, trip over that chair. Is this a drama? Throw that crap against the wall. Doesn't matter to me how you use your difficulty. In fact, there is no right or not right way to use your difficulty. I just want you to give yourself the gift of using it like you use the positive moments in your life, because you'll start to see, man, I can be an agent of change when life feels yuck and when life feels wonderful. And that, my friends, That's an amazing gift to always feel your agency and know that you have choice in every single moment of every single day. It changes the game. It shifts the mindset considerably and it changes how you approach things entirely. And I hope as you go into the rest of my podcast for this season, as we head into fall, that you can see how this works for other people in some of the interviews that I'm going to do with women that are, women inspiring women, in some of the interviews that came in my midlife valuations with people who took me up on the free coaching hour. And believe me, it's still there. So you can too. I want you to see how people use their lives and move about in their lives from that sense of, I always have choice here. I always can change the dynamic here in some capacity. I hope that helps you. I hope it helps you to learn to love your story. And I hope you see how it will bring you to a centered life thriving. All right. So I'm adding a little addition here. It's the legal stuff. Just so you're aware, nothing in any of these podcasts constitutes actual psychotherapy. Yes, I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, but everything here is just educational in nature and is a suggestion of things that you could be doing in your own life to learn how to love the life that you're in instead of waiting for a life that you're dreaming of to come towards you. So just remember, this is not therapy. And if ever you need any resources for mental health, look in my notes and I'll always have a little blurb at the bottom where you can click on a link and get those services for yourself.